of you who are not very familiar with the center, who probably are coming to the center for the first time because of this festival, the Center for Memories is an initiative. The center was set up in 2017 by a group of like-minded individuals who are passionate about keeping our stories and our history and our memories as Igbo alive. So we have people like Patrick Okibo, Ndidi Nwuneli, Judy Ilo, Nkem Mweke, and Nkiro Bareke, and the rest of them. So they came together to set up a center, and the idea behind it is to have a place for documenting, for preserving, and also for showcasing our, important Igbo stories, our history, our culture as Igbo. And, the work of the center is hinged on 3 pillars. So we say, Makonya, Tana, Echi. Makonya, because it's really very important for us to, go back in time to the past, to where we're coming from as Igbo. Because to be able to understand how we got to where we are as a people, we need to know where we're coming from. And that's where our initiatives like our exhibitions, that's where they come in. So we have exhibitions from time to time that look at different aspects of our life as Igbo, our culture, our history. So between 2017 and now, the center have had over 12 exhibitions cutting across different areas of our lives. So we've had an exhibition on reviving lost technologies and innovations of Igbo. We've had an exhibition on Olandi Igbo, iconic Igbo individuals and their contribution to Nigeria and the world. We've had an exhibition, a very important exhibition on the Nigeria Biafra War that is titled Ozoemena. We've had an exhibition on Igbo cosmology and spirituality that we titled Ordinani. And currently, inside our gallery, we have an exhibition inspired by Things Fall Apart as part of this festival. But beyond the exhibition, there are other programs that the center does. We have this program, this monthly lecture series, Ńkàtà Ụ, where we gather as a people, like Anguli said, to have conversations around those important issues that affect us as a people, and what individuals like ourselves seated here can do to move our region forward. That is for today, those issues that affect us as a people for today. Then what about tomorrow? How do we groom the next generation, the people coming after us? How do we raise a generation of Igbo people who are grounded in their history, who are grounded in their culture and are also proud of their identity? And that's where our program, Nzuko comes in. So every month we have a program for children where we try to teach them their culture, we try to teach them their history, we try to, teach them those things that they need to know. And we have a monthly book club for book lovers, both for adults and for children as well. We have memorials and documentary screenings and other programs. So we're happy to collaborate with anybody. If you believe that the work of the center is very important and you think that this work should go on, please reach out to us at any time to see how you can be of support. It mustn't even be financial. It could be any other way. We're happy to partner with organizations doing similar things because no ofa alhaji kaina chirefi. So thank you so much for coming out this evening, and I'll hand over back to Anguli.
Thank you. Well, I am actually Alhaji Efi. I'm not sure Igbo people would like the Alhaji part of it. Maybe no Funzek, I am actually Efi Ofuozo. I'm teasing. Thank you so much, Ifoma. But I think that the message is clear, and it is that the purpose is, we're in unity, we're in unison with what we're doing. The message, the mission of the center, the purpose for founding the center aligns with our collective idea of whom we are as a people and touches on our overall appreciation of our identity. This is a special edition of Nkata because, as I mentioned, Nkata is not holding at the Center for Memory, it's holding an Omorphia, and it's in the spirit of the Things Fall Apart Festival. And this month, we're looking at ụNỌ KA. ụNỌ KA, the theme is ụNỌ KA, Things Fall Apart When Stories Are Lost. And this session will reimagine, a renaissance of the Igbo society through cultural memory. And it's to be led by no other person than Obianujuaku Akukwe, who is the founder of the Eastern Nigeria International Film Festival, ENIF. Anyone who has come across her or has paid attention to the festival will know that she's a force of an individual because as Igbo people, we have a lot of stories, we have a lot of potentials, but one thing also stands out, and it is the challenges that many of us meet when we take the step of founding or driving enterprises or communities. And as someone who has done that, she knows what it takes, she knows the challenges firsthand, and I think that there is no better person to speak to the issue of ụNỌ KA, the place of storytelling, the place of memories, the place of cultural memories in shaping our identity and moving forward as a region than Obianujuaku Akukwe. And so, since Ifeoma has talked about the center in the absence of the director, the conversation will start. Bikonu, in Umuofia, Milline Ezoku, it was mentioned, in fact, in every chapter of the book, in one way or the other, Chinua Achebe talks about the weather. Sometimes, too much rain, sometimes too much sunshine. And I think that we're experiencing a part of, that Umuofia that we read about in the book, where today it's a little too much rain, but we're also hoping that the sun comes out and the weather is fair enough as we proceed in today's endeavor. So thank you so much for joining us, and I will welcome Ujuaku to the podium for her presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to be here today, and it's not my first time. I think about 7 years ago, the Center for Memories hosted the screening of my documentary, Afia Attack, at the Enugu Sports Club. And that evening planted a seed in my heart. And when the time came for us to establish an organization, we chose to bring it back home. So we established Eastern Nigeria International Film Festival and decided to host it in Southeast and in Enugu. Eastern Nigeria International Film Festival, it's ENIF for short. And we did that because Center for Memories, they're already here, and they encouraged us to come. And today, ENIF stands as one of the living testimonies of what becomes possible when we find our way back home. And I'll say with intention and purpose. So to Center for Memories, I truly appreciate all you do to keep our memories alive. And I want to say a very big thank you, not just for the invitation, but for your consistent work in preserving our culture. I also want to say a very big thank you. I think he's someone I appreciate a lot, and I can't stop appreciating him and telling him how important he is to the Ìgbò nation and to me in particular, because he's someone that has supported my work since I met him. He's my mentor, my big brother in every true sense of the word, and my darling friend, and he's no other than Chief Ben Etiaba. I always tell you that you are an excellent man, and Jide Kiji, Ifenia, you are truly a light. So, my name is Obianujuaku. It means I came in abundance of wealth. I will also add that I came in abundance of stories, culture, and purpose to create impact, empower voices, and preserve heritage. I was born curious. Not the kind of curiosity that drives children to scatter the house. No, not that type. But the kind that pays attention to silences, especially ones that come after laughter or after stories end too soon. I grew up in a home where storytelling was not merely entertainment. It was the structure behind how my siblings and I learned. And looking back, it's no surprise to anyone that know about my background. It's not surprise that I became a storyteller. So today, I'll be telling you a beautiful story. Are you interested? My late grandmother, Obianujuaku, a woman of sharp wit, caustic tongue, and few direct answers, believed that truth lived in metaphor. She told stories layered with proverbs and riddles, and she expected me to sit with them until understanding came. And I remember one day we were watching a Nollywood movie titled Died Wretched, Buried in 3.2 million naira casket. I don't know how many of you that will remember that movie. The film told the story of a man who lived in poverty but was buried in extravagant luxury. And I said, Mama Nobi, like we used to call her, why do people spend so much money on people when they are no longer here and can no longer see us? And she looked up from the television, looked at me, and said, Ọnụlụakwa nwanne ya welu nkata jebe afịa, ọkpọsa anya zolo, ọbafọlụbo onye bụ ọnwụ. And you know that I'm not going to interpret this proverb. Maka na ala Igbo anyị ada akọwa inu. Right? Then she turned back to watching the movie as though she hadn't just left me more confused. That was the world I knew, where lessons were hidden in proverbs and wisdom was rarely handed plainly to you. And I'm sure a lot of us came from that kind of world as well. It was also the world my father tried to preserve with his memo. My late dad, Akokalia, documented our family history, our culture, and our ancestral knowledge. He believed that if we didn't archive our stories, we would be forced to borrow the identities of others. That foresight, I believe, was prophetic. So, when I was invited to speak on this topic, ụNỌ KA, things fall apart when stories are lost, reimagining our Igbo through cultural memory, I felt an immediate sense of both honor and urgency, because we often speak about Igbo as a land, a place on the map. But Igbo is more than geography. It is a worldview, a way of being in which community, spirit, and nature were so deeply connected that today it almost seems mythical. Because when you research thoroughly about pre-colonial Igbo society, you will understand that our forefathers came before their time, and they did a lot to bring us to where we are today. So when you talk about the achievements, people will look at you like, oh, are you sure this is not another Nollywood movie? But I tell you, they did so much, and I will encourage anyone that is a true son and daughter of the soil to research pre-colonial Igbo. So the Igbo believed that life itself was spiritual. That was and still is our philosophy, a sense of purpose, wholeness, of Ubuntu, if you will. And when we speak of cultural memory, it is not nostalgia, it is survival. To reimagine an Igbo through cultural memory is to walk back through the smog of colonial disruption, spiritual erasure, and economic devaluation, and retrieve what was almost lost, our dignity, our designs, our spirituality, to which our moral compass is tied. Because it's important that when people talk about Igbo spirituality, that is what we know as ordinana. It's not about setting up ring lights to make videos or using chalk to put under your eye to tell people that you are now an ordinary practitioner. It's tied to hard work, decency, and it's tied to our moral code. So it's important that we know that ordinana is not just about performing spirituality. And I'll say that this work of remembering where we come from cannot be passive. It must be done with imagination, with nuance, and above all, with the humility to admit that we have in many ways become strangers to ourselves. And this brings me to the man in the title, whom I love so much, ụNỌ KA. In Things Fall Apart, ụNỌ KA was the father whose life was never meant to be emulated. He was a flutist, Ogbuoja, a debtor, Onyogwo, a man who avoided war. He loved his music and moonlight. He enjoyed the present moment. His son, Okonkwo, hated him for his effeminate nature. But I want us to pause and reconsider. And what if Achebe wasn't merely contrasting father and son, but seeding a question in our minds? What if ụNỌ KA wasn't a failure, but a symbol of an alternative Igbo masculinity that was once allowed to exist and flourish before it was shamed out of memory? Before colonialism interrupted and recorded our value systems, our culture had created space for all kinds of people. There was room for the musician, the storyteller, the dibia, the hunter, the farmer, Diji, the palm wine tapper, Diochi, Dimba, the wrestler, Dinka, the creative person, and so many of them. Back then, strength was not only measured by aggression, power, authority. It was also measured by wisdom, empathy, and restraint. But times changed. What changed? Colonial rule, missionary teachings, and later on, our own internal anxieties and insecurities. They turned us towards a narrower version of manhood, one that glorified dominance, immoral wealth, and excessive materialism. And in that shift, ụNỌ KA, the flautist, the gentle father, the man who preferred music to war, became everything we were told to reject. But I want us to also pause even further and think. ụNỌ KA was not just a passive figure. He was a creative, a dinka, a master of music. And in a society where professions like DG and Diochi were honored for sustaining the community, the dinka held a vital role too. He was the conscience of the community, the one who gave expression to joy, grief, conflict, and hope. His flute was not mere entertainment. It was a vessel of memory, emotion, communication, and collective reflection. And like all true artists, like myself and many others, he carried what others felt but could not say or express. Music in traditional Igbo life was not entertainment alone. It was communication, it was ritual, it was resistance and rest. The flutist was not idle, it was integral. And ụNỌ KA's role as a flutist, when understood in this light, was not one of failure but of function. His art served a purpose that our modern metrics no longer know how to measure. And Achebe, Chino Achebe, masterful as always, gives us a glimpse of this in the wrestling scene. And that is my best scene in the book. When Okonkwo prepares to wrestle Amalinze the cat, the sound of the flute floats in the background, a sound that reminded him about his father that he so despised. So even in Okonkwo's greatest moments, where he is at his most physically powerful, Achebe brings back the presence of ụNỌ KA through music. There's a lot packed in this scene: family history, identity, remembrance. And I do not think that it is accidental. That is memory. Achebe perhaps was reminding us that tenderness and strength are not opposites, that one does not cancel the other. They coexist. As our people say, when one thing stands, another must stand beside it. We make a mistake when we evaluate a flutist with the metrics of a wrestler. Every calling has its own measure. And I wonder, in today's world, would ụNỌ KA still be considered a failure? I don't think so. In today's world of curators, wellness advocates, and storytellers, where vulnerability is no longer shameful and emotional expression is seen as strength, ụNØ KA might not be mocked at all. And I think he may be an influencer and have a large following on Instagram. His flute might even be his brand, because my brother here, Gerald, his flute, his oja, is his brand. And also there is this Reverend Father that uses oja during Mass, and I think a lot of people love him. So I think ụNỌ KA would have been a great celebrity today. ụNỌ KA might be the one reminding us to slow down, to breathe, to live fully in the moment, to live life because of tomorrow, the very things so many of us are now trying to relearn. And there's something deeply ironic in all of this, that the very traits colonialism taught us to dismiss, tenderness, creativity, and emotional openness, are now celebrated around the world. And the traits we were made to embrace, stoicism and relentless striving, are the very things unraveling many of us from the inside. Because before all of that, our culture had created space for everyone. We lost that not by tradition, but by disruption, and we are only beginning to remember. And maybe Achebe was not only showing us Okonkwo's tragedy, but offering us a quiet alternative. And maybe he was whispering that our future as a people does not depend on Okonkwo's fire alone, but also on ụNỌ KA's way of being, that both are needed and that neither should be forgotten. And maybe our loss of cultural memory is not simply about forgetting facts, but about forgetting our options, forgetting that there were once many ways that made us Ìgbò. Because when stories are lost, it is not just memory that disappears, it is identity, unity, spirituality, and even vision. We begin to lose our sense of honor, of home, not just as a place we return to at Christmas to show off our beautiful cars and mansion, or a place to perform culture by wearing red cap and displaying our isiago, but honor as a symbol. We forget that in Igbo cosmology, life is not linear, it is cyclical. And that to forget is to fall out of rhythm with who we are. And Igbo, in my opinion, didn't fall because a white man came. Part of it. But I think it fell and continued to fall because the stories stopped being told and documented. Chinua Achebe once said, and I quote, "There is no absolute. There is no absolute anything, even good things. The Igbo are against excess. Their world is a world of dualities. It is good to be brave, but also remember that the coward survives the brave man." That, he said, was the central theme of his life and work. And it was also where Igbo culture first came into conflict with those who came to improve us. The missionaries brought certainty, one way, one truth, one life, one religion. But as Achebe pointed out, the Igbo found that idea very extreme, because to be Igbo is to make space for tension between bravery and caution, between tradition and modernity, between worshiping God in a particular way and the possibility of having different ways of worshiping God. Makananko di na mba na-eyelu mba nli. Ọkwa ya? Our stories created space for contradiction, and our worldview kept that balance. And without those stories, we lose more than memory. We lose our ability to think in layered, flexible ways. We then begin to crave absolutes. And this is how a people once rooted in balance begin to break. Our cosmology, the Igbo cosmology, was never random. It taught us that the dead, the living, and the unborn exist in constant dialogue. That names carry memory, that rituals are not superstition, they are structure. They map our time, our values, and our place in the world. But when memory fades, language begins to sleep. And with it, we lose the frame through which we once understood everything. Because to name is to remember. And if we can no longer call on the names of our deities, like Akwali Omumu, Ogugu, Udo, or speak of Ofo Nogu or Ikenga without discomfort or apology, then we are not merely forgetting, we are unlearning who we are. So what do we do now? We reimagine. And reimagining is hard work. It is invention rooted in remembrance. It means returning to the sources of memory that still linger among us and shaping them to meet this moment. We do not have to look very far to begin. The fragments are still here with us, some whole, others cracked, but still alive with meaning. And perhaps the first of these is our language. Let us begin the reimagination with our language. Our proverbs are short, but they carry weight. In just a few words, they pass down lessons, values, and warnings. The Ìgbò do not shout to teach. We whisper wisdom in lines like Ewe Belu Ugo Belu and trust the hearer to understand. These are not just sayings, they are political blueprints. They teach justice, equity, and diplomacy. Then we turn to storytelling. I remember the moonlight evenings filled with riddles and tales of the tortoise, not just to entertain children, but to teach society. These stories carried lessons on greed, humility, cleverness, and survival. And what we called folklore was moral framework. And today, we must return to them, not by retreating, but by retelling through podcast, animation, and cinema. Let them live again, not only on the lips of our grandmothers, but in pixels and sound waves. And we must not forget our elders. There are books that were never printed. Their memories carry the architecture of pre-colonial life, justice systems, land agreements sealed with just words, that's integrity, marriage customs that valued family ties over flashy celebrations. We should be archiving them, not as relics, but as teachers. Because when an elder dies, it should not mean that a library has gone. And yet, too often, it does mean that. Even time for us had its own rhythm. Our market days, Eke, Ore, Avo, Nankwo, they weren't just names on a calendar. They shaped how we lived, when we gathered, traded, rested, celebrated, and even buried our dead. Today we live by time that never stops ticking. Calendar alerts, deadlines, wake up time, countdowns. But perhaps our healing lies in remembering our own time, aligning with them, our own rhythms, and deeper meanings we once attached to them. Our spiritual frameworks deserve remembering. Chi, Allah, Ofonogu. These were not outdated beliefs. They were structured philosophies of justice, identity, and accountability. They told us that every person carries a divine spark, Chi, and that truth had a spine, Ofo. And Allah was not just land. It was sacred, Adi Emeru Allah. To harm the land was to disrupt the order of life itself. And to discard all of these is to lose the moral code our ancestors lived by. How about our governance systems, often misunderstood or dismissed as informal? They were in fact detailed models of participation and accountability. The Ìgbò famously say Igbo Enweze. We've heard it many times. The Igbo have no kings, but that does not mean we had no order. What we had was a decentralized, consensus-based system rooted in collective responsibility. Power was not concentrated, it was distributed. We had village assemblies, councils of elders, and age grades who performed duties for the community. We had the ụmụnna, patrilineal kinship groups that managed the land, settled disputes, and maintained societal structure. But alongside them, we had the ụmụada, the daughters of the land, women who could challenge wrongdoing and restore balance. The ụmụnna wielded power, yes, till today. They made laws and protected lineage interests, but the ụmụada held authority. When the ụmụnna strayed, the ụmụada intervenes. They did not fight for equality in the Western sense. They practiced equity. Roles were different, but power was not absent. This wasn't about sameness, it was about balance. Each group in its time was entrusted with the power and authority to act for the good of all. We don't need to reinvent everything. Some of our governance blueprints are still here, deeply republican, partially democratic, and very comprehensive. What we need now is restoration and strengthening to recognize that equity was our way, and in that way was wisdom. Atuola omalo. Atuola omalo. Omalo. Atuola ofeke. Let's reimagine our symbols. Uli, Nsibidi. These held codes of womanhood, power, covenant, secrets, and history. Let us not lose them to novelty. Let us reimagine them in murals, textiles, streetwear, and digital art. For us, beauty has always had meaning. Let us celebrate our artists and historians, our writers and musicians and storytellers and memory keepers. From Achebe's quiet defiance to Uche Mechata's bold truths, from Mike Ejara's lyrical storytelling to Diobilibo Brothers and Celestine Oko's philosophical high life, they remind us that memory is not a dead thing, that every generation must write its own or risk losing the plot entirely. And in this digital age, memory must live where people live. And today, people live online. We all live online, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and all of them. All of the above. Our ancestors inscribed wisdom on walls and skin, on cloth and drum. We too must inscribe, but now on servers, in apps, in films, and in code. Imagine a virtual reality museum where a young person in London or Brazil can explore the sacred spaces of our land, places they may never visit in person but can still connect with. Or a mobile game, not about fighting or winning, but about learning, about taking a journey through Igbo cosmology guided by proverbs, where each level teaches what our ancestors once passed down by moonlight. And what of our language again? Thoughts may not always begin in language, but language is how we refine it, how we carry it, how we pass it on. Every word we lose is a thought that may never find its way to the world. Reimagining an Igbo means speaking Igbo again, not just in prayers or in political slogans, but in WhatsApp love notes like Nkem, Obim, Afolonginanya, Umuaku Neligokwanni, and memes. We need to start creating those. We can bring it to life in animation, in storybooks, in voice-activated apps that teach our toddlers to say Biko before they learn please. We must also draw from our indigenous knowledge, not just to archive them, but to translate them into tools. Our metaphysical concepts like Chi, Obanje, Ilowa can shape conversations on identity, on life and death, on ethics, even on environmental consciousness. And when we create, let us create from our own core. Very important. We must stop waiting for Western validation because before we believe in our stories. Let our fashion reflect our fabric. Let our hair reflect our identity, not our inferiority. Let our tech be guided by our reality, community logic, akonuche, wisdom, not just Silicon Valley blueprints. Because the real work is not to choose between memory and modernity, but to have a conversation with them, to blend them together. Let artificial intelligence learn our stories, not to replace us, but to reflect us. Because if memory dies, so does imagination. And if imagination dies, so does the future. We are not too late. Anaibo is waiting. Our ancestors have not left us. They are still speaking. Perhaps we are the ones not listening. We must learn to listen again. Because if things fall apart was a warning, then this may be the reply, the call to rebuild, not by copying the past, but by conversing with it. Achebe gave us the falling. Maybe it's our turn to write what must come together. He wrote things fall apart. Maybe it's the time to someone to write things come together. And to do that, we must first appreciate what makes us Igbo. A worldview that honors every person's contributions. One that sees the hunter and the palm wine tapper, the engineer and the software developer, all contributing in different ways, each one valued, none ranked above the other. In our culture, no profession is beneath dignity because dignity lies in the doing, in the purpose, and in the role each person plays in holding the community together. Maka na anyụkọ mamịlị ọnụ, ọgba ụfụfụ, and ekele ọlụ eke. Onye malụ nke ya, ọnọdụ na nke ya na-alụ. We must preserve this wisdom and pass it to the next generation, not just in books, but in practice, in policy, and in pride. Because every time we forget who we are, we become easier to reshape by others. My father used to say, when we are growing up, and if I ask a little naughty, my dad would say, "N'onye amara onye ọ bụ, ụwa akpọọ ya onye a." And he would go and say, "Onye ka ị bụ?" I would say, "My name is Obianujuaku. Afọ m bụ Obianujuaku." I said, "Obianujuaku, nwa onye ka ị bụ?" I would say, "Abụ m nwa onye echi nwa alọ, ada akụkalịa." They say, "Remember that." So onye amara onye ọ bụ, ndị mmadụ eme gịnị? Akpọọ ya onye a. So let us be intentional in anchoring our investments here in people and in purpose. The Center for Memories is here. Afia TV is here. ENIF is here. And who is next? Onyaga na Nwanneya. Let no one be left behind. Not the widow in our family, not the cousin struggling in silence, not our neighbors whose name we never ask, not even the sibling we have grown apart from. Maka na nwanne ozu na wozu arụ. Ka anyị chịkọta ọnụ maka na anyị dị iche. Anyị bụ ife dị iche. That's my mother's name. My father gave her that name, ife dị iche. And the ndị Ìgbò bụ ife dị iche. Ana anyị amaka, we have land, gold in our land. And anyị bụ ndị gboo, the Asians. Ask questions about that. It's time to retrace our steps. It is time to remember. It is time to reimagine. And it is time to rebuild our Igbo. Daalụnụ.
I'm going to be inviting someone who will help to unpack her presentation this evening and who is going to lead the Nkata, part of the Ńkàtà Ụ. So he's going to unpack the session. And he's no other than Gerald Chukwuebuka Ibe. So Gerald is a storyteller himself. He's a writer. He's a folklorist. And he's going to help us to, unpack the conversation. So there are going to be questions with the speaker, and then they'll open it up to the audience at some point. So let's please stick together. Thank you very much.
Ujuaku, thank you very much for this lovely time you have shared with us. It is impossible to disagree with everything you've said. I think you've laid out your argument in a very thoughtful, a very thorough, and a very sophisticated way. My intention with the 30 plus minutes we have together is maybe to problematize some of these ideas, to go deeper in them, and then to bring everybody into a conversation around some of the core themes that you have hit on today. The goal is to keep it very casual. I'll ask a couple of questions. There'll be a microphone floating around. My grandfathers were monuments of men. They were masters of magic, of mischief and mystery, king and judge to saint and sinner. The first lesson I learned in their shadow was to polish silence until it shines. To find truth in parable and proverb, their libraries and cellars were glorious colosseums. Magnificent monuments, pages stretched to the heavens, cellars dug to the earth's core. But see, when you are a child, everything seems bigger than it actually is. My grandmother said men can get drunk off books and become literate in liquor. There is nothing noble here. I asked my grandmother, how do you honor a man who forgets his name? I asked my grandmother, how do you honor a man who rejects the world? She says, you remember his name after he has died. And I remember visiting my grandfather's bar, falling between cracks of ledger and constitutional law. I still return to these chapters in night tremors. The clinks of bottles and the swoosh of pages. I see my grandfather drink away another book. A dream more vivid than a memory. I remember his mind giving up on him for staying alive too long. And the second time for defying death. He lost control of half his body, and then his mind will wander and forget to come home to a room full of grandchildren whose names he had forgotten, and then his mind will wander and forget to come home. I asked my grandmother, how do you honor a man who rejects the world? She says, you remember his name long after he has died. Thank you. That was impromptu, just to give you some time. The first memory I had, speaking on the conversation of family memory, first memory I remember as a child was a memory of my father cradling my 3-month-old older sister. And I remember it very vividly. He had a Mercedes-Benz in a house in Lagos, in Ikeja, and he was in front of rocking her back and rocking her back and rocking her back and forth. I remember the event like I was there. But the challenge is that I was not there. The challenge is I was not even born. And I wonder, what are the limits of our memories? Sometimes we remember some things that we experienced, but we were not even there when those things happened. So I wonder how you think about this concept of memory. Where does it begin? Where does it end? Who holds it? Who doesn't hold it? And how can some people access memories that they weren't even there to have in the beginning?
Thank you. That's a powerful one, like remembering your dad with your younger sister, and you were not, your older sister, and you were not even there. I mean, that's a powerful memory, right? Because memory lives in our bloodline. And if we understand that memory, it's in our bloodline. Sometimes, not to go through, not to be spiritual here, but sometimes, sometimes we remember things that we are not even witness to, right? Especially if you come from a family that is deeply connected to your spirituality, to the land, to one that honors a lot of elements. So that kind of thing could happen. Another thing is you could also reach out to your dad or your great-grandparents and ask them questions about memory, because they hold that, or the elders in the community. So there are a lot of things, if we look around us, that hold memories. It depends, where are we looking? What are we asking? Who are we speaking to, right? And it's not just humans. Even the tree in your community is holding a memory that if you want to assess that, you can ask questions and they will tell you. So in my, like the Obu of my family, there is a tree there, and that tree has been there thousands of years, right? And it's holding a lot of memory. And when you ask questions, the elder will tell you, the people, my uncles, my dad, will give you the history of that tree. So, but if you don't have people around you that can actually tell you what that tree is carrying, there is also a way to assess that. And that is tied to your spiritual background. But I don't want us to go deep into spirituality today. Yeah.
I think in one way, many of us are trained with a very imperial logic. You have to be somewhere, feel something, know something, for something to be valid. Can you trust a memory that you think you have, but it's not yours? Is that authentic? Is that original? Is that powerful? How do you think about that?
I will say that it's authentic, because these are the things I love to speak about, the things I've experienced. And there are ways as Ndibo to assess that kind of thing. So there are some remembering that you have, maybe through dreams or through meditation. And if you're not so sure, you ask questions. And one of the ways our people ask questions is to go through Afa. So I don't know how many of us understand what that means. So if there are memories you don't really trust, because I believe that every memory, majority of them is authentic, even the ones we consider negative, you find out, why is this showing up in my thinking, in my thoughts? Why am I seeing what I'm seeing? You ask questions, and once you begin to ask questions, even if you don't want to do Alpha, ask your dad, your parents, your grandparents, your uncles, and most of the time, a lot of the time, they will tell you, oh, now one that kind of thing for before. There's always an answer because of what? It's in our bloodline. That's why family history is really very important.
You spoke about the benefits of memory and memory being a platform for multiple imaginations, reminding us of the multiple ways that we exist, multiple ways that the example you used was, for example, how masculinity had existed in the past. I wonder what the benefits of forgetting are, and if there's a pathway to reimagination that also flows through forgetting.
I think when I was doing my short speech, sometimes we forget, not because we just want to forget. And reimagination is also very critical in remembering. And it's tied to when we forget, we lose everything. We lose our identity. We lose our vision. We become less confident, right? And our remembering is very powerful because when we remember who we are, we begin to find ways to become better. And when we talked about the Igbo male masculinity that was shamed, and you look at what is going on today, you see that a lot of Igbo men are trying to be Odogun. There's nothing wrong with being an Odogun. But Ada Abaka Abu Odogun. And it's because the society has made them to think that for you to become a man, there are certain things you need to do. You must have cars, you must have beautiful houses, you must be shown to be a man like Okonkwo. But there are other ways to be a man. By being soft, there's nothing wrong with that. By showing emotion, just like ụNỌ KA. So I think in Things Fall Apart, Achebe was also trying to show us, like the Igbo, we have, it's not just a narrow, it's not linear, it's cyclical. The Igbo philosophy, we don't believe in one thing. We believe in both in the negative and the positive, right? Yin and yang, duality. So it means that all of this, they can coexist. And when we think about what happened in the past, right, how we used to live before it was shamed out of memory, right, and begin to think about it and marry it and accept everyone, we'll have a thriving society. And that's when people will actually be very free to begin to ask questions, trusting that whatever it is they will find, that they won't be shamed for it.
Thank you very much. You had spoken also about being informed by our culture as we're creating and having our memory inform our culture. I look at the room here, and I look at Umofia here, and there are many different types of artists. We have incredible folk musicians who are reimagining and reviving indigenous Igbo instruments, but with incredible amplification and playing new rhythms on them. We go into the center over there, and we have individuals who are reinterpreting in CBD and Igbo motifs and ideas in acrylic and paint and oils and new types of artistic practices that might not have been indigenous to our people. I wonder how you think about this relationship of indigeneity and of kind of cultural continuity and the relationship and the marriage between both. And I'll throw this question right back to the audience, but I also wonder if you could talk to us specifically about your own artistic practice and how you've been able to marry and maybe any tensions that exist between these traditions, if you even see them as tensions at all.
I think it's very important that we understand that the world has evolved, right? And we live here now in a digital age, and it's not like in 1960s or 1950s or even pre-colonial time, not like the time of our forefathers. So what comes with this kind of age is reimagination. We evolve with time. So I struggle when people think that we have to continue to do things our forefathers did. They performed wonderfully well, and I love them for it. But it's time to reimagine new things. So the way they, for instance, prayed to their gods, may not be the way we do that. And the way they communicate with nature may be different from us. And when it comes to storytelling, they believed in oral storytelling. They just pass down knowledge. But we are in this age, the digital age, when we have everything around us to help us document those stories they have told us. Majority of them did not document our stories, but some of us still know the stories, either through research or through what they have told us. So it's going to be very disingenuous if we don't document these stories for our children, because they will come tomorrow and ask us, you were at the time of ChatGPT, AI, tech, and all of that. Ma, where is our story, right? So I believe in reimagination. I believe in, a lot of people are doing it anyway, but I believe it's about time to tell our stories truthfully, in authentic ways. Of course, we are not going to water it down, but tell it to meet today and also meet the future and leave something for our children that are coming up.
Fantastic, thank you. I'm going to throw that question to the audience. This is Nkata, so we're here to have a conversation. I know there are many visual artists in the room. There are many folklorists in the room, ethnomusicologists, novelists, whatever your background is. How do you balance the past and the present in creating your art? So let's start the conversation there and let's move it around. The question is, what is the relationship and how do you balance incorporating your indigenous tradition with the modernity in creating your art, writing your novels, creating your literature?
All right. Thank you very much. My name is Chima Korea. I teach history. I specialize on Igbo history. I teach at Marquette University in the United States. So, I'm very excited to be here, and thank you for an exciting, wonderful lecture. So, this is really something that should be archived, for people to. So, I'm not going to respond to that. I'm going to ask a question, please, if you don't mind. A couple of years back, I think in the 1940s and 50s, Simon Ottenberg wrote a book, I think it's titled Igbo Receptivity to Change. And the idea was, compared with every other ethnic group, the Igbo is the ethnic group that is sort of adapting Western ways of life and values that to an extent, compared with contemporary discourses, that Igbo culture, including language, is endangered. Right? So, how do we sort of address this issue, considering the importance of the history, culture, and memory, and fitting into sort of the global context in which we are all struggling to be part of?
Thank you for that question. And I love the fact that you mentioned language. And yes, the Igbo language is indeed in danger. And I think that what happened to us was because in every culture, you find the positive and the negative, right? And because the Igbo cosmology believes in biri kambiri, so we let things, so if we see a culture that we think that we like, we adopt it. But what happens is that with time, it begins to erode your own culture if you are not grounded in that particular culture. So when it comes to language, I think a lot of our parents sort of raised children to despise the Igbo language because they felt like I want my kids to be Igbo children, right? So it affected that a lot. But I also see a lot of people, I have friends that have written, authored books, a dictionary. There's this Igbo dictionary. I've seen a lot of creatives actually setting up YouTube channels. And what are they doing? They're teaching people that cannot even speak Igbo how to speak Igbo. So it's really very important because any person, and I say this respectfully, it's really a bit tough for one to actually imbibe culture and the identity when you don't understand the language. And the beautiful thing is that those of us that are still struggling to understand the Igbo language or understand the culture, a lot of them are making efforts. And because they are making efforts, I know that we are going to get better. And I also would like to encourage artists of Igbo descendants to sort of imbibe our culture, our identity, even our language in the stories or in their creation. It's very important because a lot of people, I may not go and sit down to go either study a dictionary or but I can go and watch a film and see the subtitle and I understand what they're saying. And from that, I can ask questions, right? So it's important that we meet everyone where they are. But I want to end by saying your language is tied to your identity. And it's important that we understand that and make efforts to revive the Igbo language. Yeah, thank you.
I hope you can hear me. My name is Richard Agu. I want to help us by situating this properly. It is not that our people don't like to speak Igbo. It is also not that it is not possible to speak Igbo. What do I mean? Like you rightly said, information storage and retrieval, as it were, has greater benefit now that we have technology. Before this, all our people did was orature. We passed it down until the white man came to give us access to writing our language. Remember that the first Igbo primer was actually written by a Yoruba man, Bishop Ajayi Crowther in Onitsha. By the time the Igbo Bible was written, because I must go back to history now because of what you said. We must situate this properly. The two dominant religions that came to Igbo land were the Catholic religion under the RCM and the Anglican religion under the CMS. These were the missionary societies sent to bring religion here. And they spoke different varieties of Igbo. There was the Umuahia, Owerri, being spoken by the Anglicans. Then there was Ọ Ka Onitsha being spoken by the Catholics. Okpara's government in 1954 felt that we needed to have something central and instituted a commission led by the first Igbo doctor, Dr. Simeon Onwu. And by 1958-59, they produced something called Onwu Orthography, which is Central Igbo, for which they believed everybody would adhere to, which happens in Yoruba land and in the north, in Hausa land, because their own orthography had been standardized long time ago. But you'll find out that our old sage himself quarreled with this at his speech in Owerri and said it was wrong. That was Achebe himself, where he delivered the Ahajioku lecture. He did it in Igbo and he spoke Ogidi dialect. So going back to that same problem we have, why do I say this? Ohaneze Ndi Igbo is the biggest thing we have as Igbos. The meetings of Ohaneze, like what we're having this evening, is done in English. Why? Because the first Ohaneze meeting, somebody raised him, how can we be doing Igbo meeting in English? Sisiono stood up and spoke total Ngwo. Akanwi Biam stood up and spoke total Afibo. Nobody heard the other. So that is our reality. So we cannot, it's not about civilization of people who are Igbo. No, that's a fundamental problem. There's a fundamental problem. We must begin to address it from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I really love your submission, because I also think, and it's very important that we understand when we talk about Igbo, there's this saying that Igbo na sunonu nonu and Igbo fu, right? And I love what Achebe said, and I believe in that school of thought. I'm from ỌNỌ KA. I speak ỌNỌ KA, and I also speak the central, like the Onitsha dialect. So it depends on where I find myself. If I find myself in ỌNỌ KA, I speak my dialect. If I come to Enugu, I speak the general language. But what I'm saying is that should not stop us from imbibing the Igbo language. So whether you're from Ngwo, whether you're from Onitsha, Ojoto, Ogidi, Umuahia, speak your dialect. And it's really a very beautiful thing. That's diversity. So when I don't understand, I will ask you and you interpret for me. And from there, I am learning your language, right? So I think I was on TV at Afia TV yesterday, and the presenter asked, what are we going to do about students failing the Igbo language course because they speak Igbo, right? But they don't know how to speak the Igbo Udaum. I've forgotten all of those. But I think that's a problem, like that students will fail, teachers will fail students for not speaking a particular kind of Igbo. It's not right. Because it's about our culture, it's about identity, it's about who we are as a person. Igbo nasu no. Once we understand that, I think it solves all the problem. And accept people as they come. I cannot believe can believe. And that is our philosophy. And I think we should live by it.
Thank you very much. The microphone is still in the audience. The palm wine is flowing, so let the questions be flowing. And the conversations be flowing as well.
My name is Uzamaka Asiebu. So, two things. First, I will try to respond to your question, and then I have some questions I also want to ask. The first one regarding bridging the gap, I believe it stems from us having pride in our culture. I know most of us here, we remember the Ijebu event that happened I think 3 weeks ago, Ojido Oba, where everyone came home, people from they were living in different countries. They came back to Lagos to be able to celebrate their culture. And I remember, I'm from Imo State, right? And in my own state, in my own village, we have a certain culture that and when I was younger, people used to come back, to celebrate it. But nowadays, it's not so. It's something that people have reserved. It's only for non-religious people and all that. I think for us as Igbo people to be able to bridge that gap, we need to understand and have pride in our culture. And, this thing with religion where we're all grasping another man's religion and forgetting where we come from. Our religion doesn't have to be bad. When you talk about Igbo religion, people ascribe it to Ekwensu, only one God. But there are so many other gods. There are the good gods in Igbo land that we also have to acknowledge. And that's something that when we accept that, we will start having pride in our culture and start preserving it. Now, to my own question to the beautiful woman that has been speaking to us, thank you so much. Your words to us has been very insightful. Regarding memories, when you were asked the question, when you were responding to the first question about memories, there was something that came to my mind I wanted to ask, something that my father has, told me sometimes, which is the thing about Ilowa, right? Is there a correlation between, what the host said in terms of remembering something that happened when he wasn't born? What if that remembrance was something that happened when he was in his other self, before Lotowa? Right? Is there that correlation in this memory thing? Is it something that is, my dad said is something happening in Igbo land, but, I also want to hear other people's opinion.
I said I don't want us to go deep into spirituality here, right? That's not why we're here. But I'll say something. I'm working on a documentary titled Elowa. Yes. And yes, I was trying to avoid this question because I don't want it to take us there because I know it's going to spring up a lot of questions. But yes, your dad is very correct. And that's why it's important that we understand our spirituality. You know, people call it religion, but we don't have religion, we have spirituality, right? And when you understand that, we have our own beliefs, and Elowa is a part of it. And when you understand Elowa, I think it solves some of the problems or answers a lot of questions that we are running around trying to find. So yes, what I will say to that is that your dad is correct. And secondly is that just a little patience. You will see the documentary titled Elowa. It's coming.
And do you have a follow-up question? That is answered. Okay. We have a question over there on the left, on my left.
Thank you very much. Today has been interesting. I was opportune to listen to your session with the children. I am Gerald Eze. I was opportune to listen to your session with the children, and you were teaching them generational blessings. That they should also acknowledge that they have generational blessings and not just curses. So I want to say something about memory. The role of musical instruments and stories is a very important one. My godfather, Mr. Tony Okoye, was, before he died, he was suffering from, he had stroke and memory loss, couldn't recognize me. And I tried to explain myself, this is me, I am your godson. The wife tried, nothing worked. But there's something about this man. He was a seasoned school principal, my father's contemporary, and he was called Commando. And so I was looking at Commando. A whole Commando does not have a grip of his memory anymore. But I didn't know that there was something that could activate Commando. And so because it was a musical session, I came with a family that I trained in ụNỌ KA to just play music for him. And we didn't know what it would do to him. So they sang, played guitar, sang some folk songs. He was nodding his head. But then I brought out the Oja and I played. And the next thing, he started reeling out Igbo proverbs. So this man has now remembered that he is Igbo. The next thing he goes, that is his favorite saying, Igbo proverb. He drops this, and after a while, he says, Nna ke maka papa gi. So, Nna ke maka papa gi. And the moment the wife started stressing him again, he tuned off again. And so, the role of music, particularly Igbo musical instrument, guitar did not do that job. Piano wouldn't even do it. And so, Uju, Biko, tinyekere ọnụ na ndụ ndị Igbo n'ịkpọ ọba anyị mkpọkọrọ. Maka sị na ịkpọ ọbịa mkpọkọrọ, agbata obi ewere kpọọ afịfịa. When I talk, I make sure that I don't say, I am to go to so place with my Oja, or I have been there and there with my Oja. But the places I've been with this Oja, I'm a pianist, I'm a concert pianist. I don't even, those places, the doors don't open with the piano. And when I walk in with the Oja, it's original. So, what is it about traditional folklore? Because your presentation was pure storytelling and it had a lot of information. So, what is it about stories and musical instruments with the memory that we hold as a people, as Ndi Igbo? And then what you would tell us about this, what is it that our attitude towards these stories and the instrument, where will it lead us to? Thank you.
I love this question. In my presentation, I think I mentioned that in traditional Igbo life, music is not just entertainment, it's spiritual, right? And it's remembrance. So, and that's why I said that ụNỌ KA was my favorite character in Things Fall Apart. Because he understood the Oja, he understood the importance of music, just like the story you shared with us. And I remember in my TEDx talk, I mentioned about our music, the Igbo musical instrument. We have the Udu. Without going into details, my father gave me a beautiful present, and it's Udu. And that Udu has stayed with me for so many years. I turned 50 this year, right? And if you understand that it's all about healing, it's empowerment, if you understand the relationship between Udu and Udu, something like this, and femininity, you'll appreciate what Udu signifies. We have our Ogene, we have our Oja. And if you understand Oja and trace it back to Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, when Okonkwo was battling Amalinze, what happened? Immediately he heard the flute. What happened? Omabula Malinze. Why? Because it's spiritual. When it comes to gathering like this, that we are not here to talk about spirituality, I try to downplay it. But I want to, the Center for Memories, I think we need to host a session on spirituality because there's a lot I would like to unpack. Being a woman, being someone that understands the Igbo spirituality, being someone that comes from a lineage that has come from a priesthood and a kingship lineage. So it's important that at least I share the little knowledge I have about the Igbo spirituality. Then a musical instrument is very powerful. And that is why it's so difficult for it to be copied. So for you to play an Oja in a way that is going to move people, I mean, if somebody is here now and maybe the person is sick or depressed or going through one challenge or the other, and your Oja begins to play, you don't need to talk to the person again. There is something is going to activate in the person, whether it's healing, maybe joy. The person will come back to life. And it's very disturbing and disappointing that our people are not investigating and researching like people like you. What is in our music that makes it wake people up? So when people listen to, I know it's been a bit blah, blah, blah right now, but you know why people love Flavor's music. There is something about the instrument that he imputes in his music that people love. Or is it the Obilibo, right? Until tomorrow, when we listen to Celeste Oku's music, what happened? We want to, both old and new, want to do what? Dance to it. Why? It's spiritual. So if you listen to all of those musicians, the Mike Ejiara, right? People want to listen. It wakes you up. It activates something that is dormant in you. So the moment we understand that our music is it's not just pure entertainment. There is knowledge, there is history, there is spiritual activation embedded in it. I think it's going to help us a lot. And I gave people a challenge, I think a few years ago, I think 2020, during my TEDx talk, that somebody should go and run a documentary, produce a documentary on Igbo instruments. And I don't think someone has done that, because if they have, I would have known. So I'm also throwing it out. If you can't run a documentary, if you can't go that deep into music, traditional music equipment, please go and do that. If you need support, no, don't come to me for. If you need knowledge support, you can reach out, right? But we can work together on it to make that happen. But because I think it's very important.
Thank you. Okay, we have, may I just respectfully, I know we have a lot of elders here. We also have a lot of young people here.
And I also want to say, Gerard is someone I know very well. When he said that his Oja has taken him to a lot of places, and I said if ụNỌ KA was living today, ụNỌ KA may have been touring the whole world. I know that Gerald has traveled all over the world just with his Oja. He has been to everywhere you can imagine, just with his Oja, right? He has played for kings, for nobles, for anybody you can think of. And I think that's how we met. So it's very important because when we belittle what we have, others know. So if they are inviting him to come and play Oja, not to come and do any other thing, right? To play Oja, what does that tell you? That they know, these Oyibo people, they understand us more than we understand ourselves. Because I said, Ibo na-emaro onye Ibo, ndị mmadụ enye gị afa. Onye amaro onye obu, akpọ ya onye a, right? So they understand, and that's why he's getting that invitation. So I still say, if you want to tell that story, come, let us work on it together.
Thank you very much, Ma. I just want to encourage some of the young people in the room. I want to see your hands up. I want to see you asking some questions. So before we go there, who has the microphone?
I do.
Okay, I see two young people here in the front left. So let's make sure they get to ask some questions. I do. Where are you? I do.
I'm at the back.
Okay, let's get you to the front.
Miri Doredo.
Okay, thank you so much.
For the wonderful.
Thank you for affirming my name. I love it.
Mili Doredo Dalo. Dalo Rine for that wonderful presentation. I am throwing it back to the beginning of your presentation where you spoke so much about ụNỌ KA. I'm also very, 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 very attracted, for lack of better words, to that character. And I want to ask, ụNỌ KA as an alternative to masculinity, Umada for equity, not equality. And then colonialism happened. Absolutes replaced alternatives. And now, I'm manalo baaho, oburu omenala. So ihe ndị ahụ kịta abụgoro omenala. And that comes to my question. What do we do? How do we bring back alternatives that has now replaced the absolute we have now? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I think that's why what we are doing here, Ńkàtà Ụ, is very beautiful. I mean, I've listened to other speakers, and every month people come here to speak. What they are doing is that we are going back to all of those misconceptions and try to reimagine them. And yes, alo ba aro obulo menana. Mananya mankwezi ko obulo menana. What we are saying is that we are not going to copy everything like, okay, our forefathers this way, I will continue to do it that way. But we can have a conversation with the past and look at those things they did that is not really that important in our time now, right? And see how we can let those ones go and bring in the ones that are relevant in today's time and look at what is going on now and make it better. And when you talk about equity, it's very important that we understand that, when I look at people abusing Igbo men on the internet, I find it disheartening. You know why? Because I grew with a father that understands what it means to be an Igbo man. I met my great grandfathers, and they were men in the true sense of the word. And I've been surrounded by great men. I mean, you see someone like Chief Ben Itiaba, you see Chief Emekamba, and a lot of great Igbo men, right? So when people bash Igbo men and say Igbo men are this, Igbo men are that, I feel sad about it, or when people say, oh, Igbo men abuse their women. Of course, there are men that embrace such silliness, right? But there are also Igbo men that are fantastic. There are also Igbo men that are fantastic. And when we talk about equity, it's very important that we understand that that our traditional governing structure gives room for equity. No one is above the other. So if you understand it in that light, that we have our own roles, but that does not demean the other person's role, then you will appreciate what our forefathers left for us, right? So when we know that equity is very important and see in what ways we can reimagine that today, or if we think that there are a part of our culture about equity when it comes to a male-female relationship that is not serving us now, I think we sit down and talk about it and make it work. But that does not mean that we are going to disregard everything that we know about Omona and Omuada, that we know about Igbo men and Igbo women, and feel like, oh, what they do is that they do a lot of wrongdoings to women. It's not like that. I came from Oka. I'm from Oka, and Oka is a matrilineal society. So there are certain things I struggle with understanding, and I'll tell you why. Because it's a matrilineal society, we were taught that. And if I return home now to, let's say, my village or my family compound, and I see my uncles very older than me, right? You know how they will greet me. Do you know how they will greet me? They will sort of bow to say, Ada Ibele. That shows you how powerful you are as a daughter. That's for Oka tradition. So growing up in such a society, I struggle to find a lot of things that is happening now, to understand a lot of them. So I think what we need to do is to go back, look at certain aspect of our culture that is not serving us now, disregard them, and bring those that we think that will be beneficial to our society as we meet it today. But do it with sense, because some of the things we actually copy are so detrimental to our culture and to our children. And that's why when you go outside there and copy, and we come back and we begin to ask, oh, but our forefathers didn't do this, so what is going on? Our people are behaving anyhow. It's because of borrowed culture. So, to your question again, I think we need to have a conversation with the parts and not ikwe ka alụ gbaro ka ọ bụla omenala, and see how we can make things serve us and work together to make our society, I mean the Igbo society, I call it Igbo nation because we're actually a nation, make it better. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. How are we feeling? Can we just give a round of applause to encourage? We're still in the room. Thank you very much. The microphone will go around very shortly again. The two microphones are here. I just want to pick up on that last comment a little bit. We often run the risk of essentializing the past, of making it very simple, both in positive and negative terms. One can use the past to make an argument for why something should stay, and use the same past for making an argument of why something should leave. As we turn to our ancestors for inspiration and for hope and imagination, I think it's also important to remember that us too will soon become ancestors. So the question I have for you simply is, how do we prepare to be ancestors? And when our children and our great-grandchildren pray to us in 50, 100 years, how do we make sure we leave something good for them now based on what we have inherited? But even when they call upon us, we're able to give them something good in the next 50 to 1,000 years.
I think one answer to that is be a decent human being. Be decent, be kind, be noble. Right? Because there is something about decency. It solves a lot of problem. And if you want to become, because I think when I was speaking with the young kids in the afternoon, the young students, I said that we always pray and bind our ancestors. And we say things like every generational curses, die, 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 die. And I asked them a question. Have you guys heard about generational blessings before? And they said yes. Have you ever said, I claim my generational blessings? And the answer is no. You know why? Because they've been claiming Abraham, blessings are mine. Who is Abraham? Right? So I will say, be a decent human. Be nice. Right? Be kind to people around you and work hard. That's just it. Be a decent human.
So we are right about time, but we'll take a couple more questions, maybe 3 more questions before we wrap. I'll just bring the microphone over here, and then we'll pass it. We'll pass it over here. So one over here, one over there.
Okay. Thank you. The presenter, please clarify me first about your name, Millie Doledo. Wait, is it? Is it?
Afo Tutum.
Yes, okay, Afo Tutugi. Millie Doledo. I understand it to be clean water, or what do you say?
Yeah, Millie Doledo. Millie na agbalo.
Clean.
Yeah.
Millie Diocha.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
Now I will end my contribution with something. There is always this bemoaning of Ndi Igbo, Ilu's identity, in terms of not speaking Igbo or not teaching Igbo to our children. Much as that may be right to some extent, but I am of the opinion that we overstress it. Yes, I assure you, Igbo identity will never be lost. Whether we are speaking Igbo today, or we are speaking English language today, or more of it today, Igbo language will not be lost. In spite of the dialects, absolutely, every language has dialect. And there is always a central tendency to what everybody understands. Whether you speak Abakaleke or Nsukka or Enugu, that is, here in, what do you call it? Wawa. Exactly. It will not die. Speak as much of it as possible, and they are conveying meaning to other people who are not from your stock, and it will survive. Then, in your response to somebody's question, how can it be that an Igbo person will fail Igbo in exam or things like that? You wondered why. It is possible. Can an English person fail English language just like a non-English can fail English? Now let me tell you this. The Igbo is blessed.
Absolutely.
Of all human beings. If you, maybe depending on your contact and your travel and so on, the Igbo man is very versatile. He's never hidden anywhere. I recall Professor Nwaga's, during one presentation of this economics textbook here in Enugu. Professor Nwaga is a typical Igbo man, and he studied English, and he taught English. And do you see the way he said it? Allow it. Awụ m onye Igbo. Adị m proud of iwu onye Igbo. Alụrụ m onye Bekee. Agụrụ m Bekee. Kụziere ndị Bekee. So, there is a message there. An Igbo man can teach the English language. It is possible. Why people have been in classes with us. And I bet you, oftentimes, we can do better than they in formal English, because what is taught is in a curriculum. And if you follow the curriculum, whether you are English or Igbo, If you don't get it right, you don't get it right. So, finally, sorry. You are hurrying me. Okay, well, it's okay. So what I want to advise, therefore, we should not whip ourselves. But all we do is to be conscious of the fact that identity and the identity in Igbo, to assure you that identity in Igbo, amafunata, Igbo identity, the more encapsulated in truth, absolute truth. Ihe ọbụla onye ọbụla na-eme onye Igbo na-eme eziokwu bụ gịnị ndụ. Ndewo.
Thank you, sir. I want to clarify something. I said that it is wrong for students to fail Igbo language in schools because they don't speak a particular kind of Igbo. That's what I said. I did not say that students failing Igbo language it's wrong, right? So because a student needs to write Igbo in, I think Igbo is the way, and if I am speaking ỌNỌ KA and I do not know how to write that kind of Igbo, it means I'm going to fail an Igbo class. So I am saying that it is wrong, and I believe in the Chinua Acheb's line of thought, na Igbo, na suno no. And thank you for that wonderful submission. Right? And I believe that as well.
Thank you very much. Before that, Ifeoma, we'll take that last comment, one over here, and then we'll take them together, and then we'll call it an evening.
I'm very happy with what is happening here. The idea of failing a child because you answer the question in his or her own way is not an innovation. The child did not invent what he or she is answering. I think the teacher is on what I taught you. Okay? Not that the child is inventing. So if I've taught you with a general Igbo Izugbe, and you're writing it, what did you invent? Are you the one that invented that particular Igbo you're answering with? So I don't want to fault the teacher in that aspect. But that's not what I'm saying. My concern now is how do we preserve this culture? Because he said Igbo will never lose our culture. If you don't preserve it, if you don't preserve it, you will lose it. And then in preserving it, what are you preserving? Have you thought of repugnance, culture repugnance? Have you talked about that? It's not all we have in our culture that is right. We know what is golden rule, what is common good. If you look at our culture, there are things, even the widowhood rights and some of those things, we don't need to repeat and teach the children some of those things that are not right. What is not common good. Okay, now our children in school, from that early age that we are teaching, let me start from basic education. Do we have anything that in our schools to preserve our Igbo language? Do we have a club in school? Igbo club. The only thing you know about Igbo culture and club in school is the drama and the dancing group. It's not enough. Okay? Our tradition and culture, can we start advocating for a club where the children, aside what we teach in school as Igbo language, can we start advocating for Igbo club in schools where some of these cultures and our heritage, we will teach them in details. Now, lastly, there's something I'm advocating for, okay? While we are building our smart schools, especially in the Enugu State, can we have course content of different areas of Igbo where the culture of those places will be taught in schools that is located in those areas to preserve their culture? This is an advocacy. Thank you.
Yes, as Ifeoma is moving on to the last questions.
Just a quick one. Maka anmeme yoga, being in the present, and I never linked it to Igbo. And today, when you mentioned ụNỌ KA, and you say there is a man that is in the present, He really connected with me. I thank you for that.
Yeah, good evening. Ńkàtà Ụ. Let me quickly say, I can say, Afamo bụ Chris Ikwemesi. I'm an artist, lecturer at University of Nigeria. Onye na-asị na Igbo ama ana na ọ ga-adịgide. Let me say that there are two things that hold a civilization, the soul of a civilization: religion, language. When the two die, the civilization dies. And I think Igbo language is dying. Let us not pretend about it. Religion has died. Let us not pretend about it. We need to worry. Asị na Igbo na-ekwu eziokwu, ife niile fa na-eme na-ekwu eziokwu. What is happening in the present ebe a na-egbuzi ndị mmadụ? I'm looking at yams there. Onwere mgbe na-abụ achọ isi kedu nwaanyị na-ejebe nwoke asị onwekwala ji, onwere ụkwa, onwere nkwụ. Kịta a na-amabute ego amabute, and they are killing everybody. A na-egbu everybody ka e wee kpata ego. Ọ bụrụ Igbo culture. We have come at a crossroads where we need to look at ourselves, look at where we are coming from, and worry whether where we are going is really the promised land for Igbo people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, bro.
My name is Adide Ationu, and I've been following this session. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much. I'm very interested in when you talked about retelling our story, because you mentioned that onye amarafia or something. I don't know how the proverb goes, but apoy onya. So I'm a writer, so I do a lot of writing on Igbo mythology. And I've noticed that anytime I show someone my story, their first instinct is to ask, what's your target audience? And when I write, I don't have a target audience in mind. And then they go ahead most times to assume that I write for children. While I don't have anything against writing for children, I do think that some of the stories I write, children can read and enjoy. But why is it that there's this disconnect between Nigerians, especially Igbo people, the adults, and reading mythology about Igbo people? It's not that they don't read mythology about Greek, or a lot of them love Zeus and they write essays on them. But when it comes to Igbo mythology, it becomes a children's story. It becomes a tale around the moonlight. It becomes midnight story. It becomes something that an adult cannot read and enjoy. So why is there such a disconnect? And how do we bridge it? How do we marry mythology with how do we marry it with adults so that they can read it, enjoy it, and not just see it as something that is meant for children? Thank you.
I want to start by saying well done for the work you do. I know it's not easy, because there is something about creatives, right, and writers. Sometimes people don't appreciate the work they do in the society. And I'll tell you that why people like the Igbo, I think we've become too careless about a lot of things. And some of us have become wiser than the gods. So when they hear about the Igbo mythology, they see it as something, oh, this thing, it doesn't work, or it's akukifo, or things like that. But they read the Bible and swallow everything there. That's mythology as well, right? So when we talk about the Igbo mythology, and a lot of adults, the wise ones, in quotes, among us, will disregard that, what I'll tell you that continue writing, because your audience is there. And sometimes when we put out our work, it's not really about for people, it's not for today's people. It could be a work for the future, right? Because you're telling stories, like now we are reading Things Fall Apart. A lot of people who've dissected Things Fall Apart in the past. But I think in recent years, a lot of people are beginning to pay attention to ụNỌ KA. So the first time you read Things Fall Apart, you think like, oh my God, what a useless father. What a lazy man. You read it the second time, there is something, will strike you about this man called ụNỌ KA. And you read it the third time, you go like, man, I can relate to this character, because like I relate so well to ụNỌ KA because growing up was so hard for me, and I'm so thankful for the kind of parents, I have, especially my father and my mom as well, because I was that child that people called all sorts of names. Oh, you are so lazy. Because I never, even till today, I never want to do anything, really. So I am the adult of the family, but a lot of people think I'm the last born, because when it comes to house chores, you don't see me going to wash plates. And my parents understood that this child is different. So at home, when we returned for Christmas, everybody would be cooking. Nobody would disturb me. And I am the other. And I had that privilege because my parents understood that she's different. She's not lazy. She's just who she is. And that she's a creative. So I had this wild imagination that people attributed that to Obanje. But my parents knew what that was and they encouraged it, right? So it's important that you continue to do what you're doing. Your people, your tribe will find you. And people like us will support you, okay?
We have the last question for the evening.
Good evening, Ma. My name is Ogo. I'm a visual artist from UNN, a recent graduate. And I noticed that we are fixated on language, like the extinction of language, but we've forgotten about the arts. Like a while back, I read a book by Simon Ottenberg where he talked about the 7 artists of the Nsukka school. And I went through their artworks and it held a lot of cultural content on how art was back in the day. So my question is, as we're trying to preserve language, how do we preserve the arts? How do we support present-day artists and how they are culturally intersecting the elements of Igbo in their work? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, there's one advice I'll give you. Like, as a creative, creatives are really very deeply connected to are deeply connected to their spirituality, right? There are certain things, maybe after we'll talk, you create from your core. And that's why when you see exceptional works, they don't just copy what other people are doing. It came from somewhere. And a lot of the times, people think that creatives are sort of quirky or weird or whatever they call it, because majority of them don't operate in this realm, right? So I'm not fixated on language. I mentioned that we have so many ways we can document our culture, and that could be through murals, through artworks, right? So we have in CBD, we have Uli and all of that. I patronize a lot of artists. So you can actually put in any form, but I will tell you as a creative, is to find out the kind of art that you are called to do and follow that path. Trust me, ideas will come. And ideas that will announce you to the world. And this is me, if you want to call it a prophecy. And this is me speaking to you, because I've encountered a lot of people like you. And when I tell them to follow this path, it usually comes to pass. So I'm telling you that get into your core, ask questions. I'm not saying go and ask people questions. Ask deep questions. Ask yourself. Sit with yourself. Meditate. Go into deep meditation and the kind of art, how you can interpret your art with language and bring it into a visual presentation. I tell you that it will come, and mark today, and I hope that you reach out to me when that time comes, okay?
Thank you very much, Ma. A lot of obviously the questions for this evening have been directed towards our esteemed hostess today, but many of the answers also lie with us. So I want to encourage us, in addition to asking her questions, after the evening, turn to each other. If anybody asked a question you think you have an answer, a contribution to, feel free to connect with them. This is Nkata. We are talking with each other as well. I want to thank the Center for Memories for hosting this incredible session. Please, can we put our hands together one more time for Uju for such an amazing session with us. This is the Things Fall Apart Festival. We have another incredible session happening tomorrow with Odeluwa herself, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Make sure you get all the information. Thank you very much for one more time for Drew, and have a lovely, lovely evening, everybody. I'll pass it back to Ifoma and give Uju the last word.
I want to say a very big thank you to you, Chuki. You are a very fantastic host, and I love the fact that you're young. So when you meet people like this, you know that we have hope. And I thank your parents, I don't know them, for raising such an excellent, wonderful man. Jidekiji. Go.
Please let's put our hands together once again for Chuki and Miss Ujuaku Akukwe.
Yeah. And I'd like to, in a very special way, Kenemma Denebia Ńkàtà Ụ July 2025. Most especially our distinguished speaker for the month, Ujuaku Akukwe, for a wonderful session, and the moderator, Chuki Ibe, for driving this conversation. As is the tradition, Nkata, I'm going to briefly invite Professor Chimakorie, please come forward. Professor Chimakorie was the last Nkata speaker, so I think it would, you didn't see him, so it would make a presentation to the moderator at Nkata, so sort of passing the baton.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much for a job well done. I was inspired by your story and your sense of memory and how that is important in terms of your person and your identity today. So on behalf of the Center for Memories, staff and faculty, fascinating people, who present you these gifts as a thank you and as a token for your performance this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof.
So I'm going to call, we have a partnership with the Enugu Sports Club, and we are so glad to have within our midst the former chairman of the Enugu Sports Club, Barrister Ricky Ago, to please come and make a presentation to the speaker, our distinguished speaker for tonight, Ujuaku Akukwe. Barrister Ricky.
Congratulations again, Center for Memories, for keeping this flag very high flying and giving us yet another fantastic personality. And the interesting thing is that we are looking at the soft side of Things Fall Apart. When we were young and growing and reading it as students and teaching it in school, the perspective was that ụNỌ KA was a failure. And in Igbo land, so if you don't farm during the farming season, at harvest, ibalaka. But we've now seen, like she said very succinctly, a lot of things that worked in our grandfather's times don't work now. Dance is now a profession. Oja has taken our brother everywhere. Indeed, in 1985, when Colonel Arinze was made a cardinal in Rome, he was heralded before the Pope with Oja. So for such a beautiful rendition in this particular edition of Ńkàtà Ụ, Mididoredo, we're proud of you. We congratulate you. We thank you for sharing and inspiring the young ones. Decent dressing, decent speech. A woman doesn't have to be naked to be beautiful, because beauty comes straight from within. That also, remain that beacon. Let our girls see the people they will grow. Congratulations.
I think I'm going to hand over to Ifoma to continue. Ifoma, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you once again, Chuki. Thank you, Ms. Ujuaku, for this wonderful presentation this evening. And thank you, Dr. Ricky Agu, for doing us the honors.
Mgbe gboo ndị Igbo n'ọfụma, ka wee mesịa bịa ati Igbo n'afụfụ.